Denise Calloway was 34 years old when she found the hotel receipt in her husband's jacket pocket, dated the same weekend he claimed to be visiting his mother. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She set the table for dinner like always and waited for him to lie to her face. When she finally asked, calm and precise, Reggie didn't even flinch. He told her she was paranoid, ungrateful, that she had nothing of her own, nowhere else to go, no life outside the one he'd built for her. He leaned back in his chair, certain of his power over her, and dared her to leave if she was so unhappy. He was sure she wouldn't. What Reggie didn't know was that Denise had spent 11 years quietly tracking every dollar that moved through their marriage, including the money from her father's life insurance that had recently started disappearing into accounts she'd never seen. The next morning, she pulled a suitcase from the closet. Reggie watched, stunned, waiting for her to stop. She didn't, and as she zipped the bag closed, Denise made a decision that would end his arrogance for good. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today, and if stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is even more intense. The spreadsheet on Denise Calloway's screen was a mess of misdirection. Somebody had been moving money in small amounts, $800 here, $1,200 there, cycling it through 3 different vendor accounts to make it look like routine supply payments. It was the kind of fraud that was easy to miss, patient, careful, built on the assumption that nobody would look close enough. Denise had looked close enough. Here. She turned her monitor toward Marcus, her junior analyst, and tapped the screen with one finger. Same vendor code, 3 separate transactions, but look at the deposit dates, all within 48 hours of each quarter's closing window. Marcus leaned in, squinting. So whoever did this knew the audit cycle. Exactly. She leaned back in her chair. Internal. Someone who knows our calendar. He let out a low whistle. How'd you even catch that? Denise didn't answer right away. She just looked at the numbers the way she always did. Quietly, patiently, letting the pattern speak for itself. The same way you catch anything, she finally said. You stop assuming things are fine and actually look. By 4 o'clock, she had flagged the accounts, drafted her findings memo, and forwarded everything to the risk team. Her manager, Dale, stopped by her desk on his way out and dropped a hand on the partition. Good catch, Calloway. Again. She nodded. Just doing my job. It was a simple thing to say. She meant it simply. But walking to her car that evening, the words stayed with her longer than they should have. Just doing my job. The house smelled like the dryer sheets she'd been buying for 11 years. Denise set her bag on the kitchen counter and stood still for a moment, listening. The television was on in the other room, some sports recap, the volume low. She could hear Reggie's voice, not the TV, coming from down the hall. He was on the phone. Again. She started dinner. She sliced the chicken, seasoned it the way he liked, and had rice on the stove by the time he came into the kitchen, still holding his phone, scrolling with his thumb as he dropped into one of the counter stools. How was your day? She asked. Fine. She waited a beat. Busy? Yeah. The rice popped and steamed. She stirred it once and set the spoon down. The Northfield project, she said, keeping her voice easy and light. I was thinking about it today, actually. Didn't you say the investor meeting was this week? How'd it go? Reggie finally set his phone face down on the counter. He looked at her the way he sometimes did, not quite annoyed, but close to it. Like the question was a minor inconvenience he hadn't budgeted time for. It went fine, Denise. I was just asking. I mean, my savings went into that deal too, so I know what went into it. His voice was flat, final. I've got it handled. She turned back to the stove. The chicken sizzled in the pan. She didn't say anything else. After dinner, he took a call and disappeared into the back office, pulling the door most of the way shut. She sat at the kitchen table with her tea and listened to the low murmur of his voice through the wall. Not words, just tone. Easy, warm, familiar with whoever was on the other end. Later, he passed through the living room, dressed in fresh clothes, keys already in his hand. "Site visit," he said, not really to her, more to the room. She looked up from the book she hadn't really been reading. "Tonight?" "Client wants to walk the property before it gets dark." He was already checking his phone. "Don't wait up." "It's almost 8. "Denise." One word, said like a sigh. She looked at him. "I could come with you. I've never actually seen the Northfield site in person." Something crossed his face, quick, controlled, gone in half a second. "It's a work thing," he said. "You'd just be standing around." Then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him. His car backed out of the driveway, and the neighborhood went quiet. Denise sat there for a moment. Then she got up and went to finish the laundry. She had stopped wearing her perfume sometime in February. She hadn't made a decision about it. It had just happened, the way things like that happen. Slowly, quietly, without a single conversation. She'd reached for the bottle one morning and set it back down, and then she'd kept setting it back down, day after day, until the habit of not wearing it replaced the habit of wearing it. Reggie had never noticed, or if he had, he hadn't said so. She thought about that while she sorted the laundry, shirts in one pile, dark clothes in another. She was working through his jacket pockets before putting it in the dry clean bag, an old habit, checking for receipts and loose change, when her fingers closed around a folded piece of paper. She pulled it out. A hotel receipt, printed on cream paper, the kind nice places used. She unfolded it slowly and read the date at the top. The same weekend he'd told her he was in Memphis, visiting his mother. She sat with it for 4 hours. The receipt stayed on the bathroom counter while she finished the laundry. She moved it to her nightstand before Reggie got home. When she heard his car in the driveway just before 11, she folded it once, tucked it into the inside pocket of her work bag, and turned off her lamp. She was still awake when he came to bed. He didn't say anything. Neither did she. In the morning, she got up first, made coffee, and went to work. She sat through 2 meetings and a training call and ate lunch at her desk, and the whole time some quiet part of her brain was doing what it always did with a problem, turning it over, examining it, looking at the angles. Not the emotional part, not yet. The part that had learned, over 11 years, that reacting in the moment almost never got you anything useful. Wait. She knew how to wait. She made his favorite that evening: baked salmon, roasted potatoes, the good rolls from the bakery on Clement Street. Reggie came home in a decent mood for once, loosened his tie before he even sat down, and actually looked up from his phone long enough to say the food smelled good. Denise set his plate in front of him and sat across the table and let him eat. Let him relax into it. Let the warmth of the food and the ease of the evening settle around him like something comfortable. She waited until he was halfway through his plate. Then she said simply, "How was the Marriott on 5th?" He kept chewing for exactly 1 second too long. "What?" "The Marriott on 5th." She kept her voice even, almost pleasant. "The one downtown, specifically the weekend of the 14th. She tilted her head just slightly.
"I found the receipt in your jacket."
He set his fork down. The look on his face moved fast. Surprise first, then the quick recalibration she recognized from years of watching him manage a room. "That was a client thing," he said. "Dinner ran late. I didn't want to drive back." "You were registered for 2 nights." Silence. "And you told me you were in Memphis." He picked up his fork again. "I changed plans. I didn't think I needed to file a report every time my schedule shifts." "Reggie." "What?" He looked up. "What do you want me to say, Denise? That I'm sorry I didn't update your calendar? I'm running a development company. Things move fast." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't lean forward or clench her jaw. She just looked at him. "Then tell me who the client was." Something behind his eyes went cold. "I'm not doing this." "I'm asking a simple question." "You went through my things." He pushed back slightly from the table, and his voice had changed, harder now, with that edge she knew well. "That's what we're talking about right now. You went through my jacket like some kind of—" "I check your pockets before the dry cleaner. I've done it for 11 years. Don't." He pointed. Don't do that calm voice with me like I'm one of your little fraud cases at work. I'm your husband. I know who you are. He stared at her. Then he let out a short, humorless laugh and shook his head slowly, the way he did when he wanted her to feel small for something she'd said. You know what your problem is? You've always had this suspicious mind, always looking for something to be wrong. I built something real here, Denise. I give you a good life, a good house, everything you need. And you want to sit across from me at dinner, interrogating me over some receipt? I want you to tell me the truth. The truth. He said it like the word itself was beneath him. He stood up, smoothed the front of his shirt. The truth is, you don't trust me. After everything I've done for this family, I funded the Northfield deal, she said quietly. That was my father's life insurance money, which I turned into something. His voice rose just enough. That was nothing before I put work behind it. You handed me a check, and you acted like that made you a partner. You're not a partner, Denise. You're my wife. She said nothing. He looked at her for a long moment. She could see him reading her, looking for the tears, the wobble, the place where she'd fold the way she always had before, looking for the version of her that would apologize just to end the tension. He didn't find it, and somehow that made him angrier. You want out? He spread his hands, certain, settled in his own certainty like a man who had already won. Then go. Leave. You've got no money of your own tied up anywhere that matters, no stake in anything, nothing waiting for you out there. His voice was almost gentle with contempt. You won't leave. You don't have anywhere to go. Denise looked at him for a moment longer. Then she picked up her plate and his and carried them to the sink. Okay, she said. She washed her hands, dried them on the dish towel, and went to bed. She was up at 5:15, not because she couldn't sleep. She'd slept fine, straight through, which surprised her a little. She lay there for a moment in the gray dark, listening to Reggie breathe beside her, and then she got up without making a sound. She showered with the door closed and the fan on. She did her hair. She put on her good black blazer and the gray slacks she'd pressed on Sunday, and she did all of it quietly, the way she'd done most things in this house for years. Reggie didn't move. She picked up her work bag from the chair by the door and went to the kitchen. She called Adrienne at 6:03, standing at the kitchen counter with her coffee, voice low. Adrienne picked up on the second ring. That was Adrienne. She always picked up. Hey, Denise said. I need to ask you something. It's 6 a.m. A pause. So this is serious? Yes. She heard Adrienne shift, the soft sound of sheets, then the click of a lamp. Okay, talk. Denise kept it short. She told her about the receipt. She told her about dinner. She told her what Reggie had said, the exact words. You don't have anywhere to go. And she said them flatly, without any extra weight on them, because she didn't need the weight. The words did enough on their own. Adrienne was quiet for a moment. Then, Are you all right? I'm fine. I need to know what I'm entitled to. Joint accounts, the investment portfolio, anything held in both names. I put money into this marriage, real money. I need to know how to document it. You can pull statements on any account where your name is on it. That's your legal right. You don't have to ask him. You don't have to notify him. How far back? Pull everything you can access, 7 years minimum. And Denise, Adrienne paused. Don't move anything yet. Don't touch it. Just document. I know, Denise said. I'm not moving anything. I just need to see what's there. Okay. Another pause. Are you staying in the house? Denise looked out the kitchen window. The sun was just starting to come up, thin and pale over the neighbor's roof. For now, she said. She worked a full day. She sat through her afternoon review meeting and caught a calculation error in a third-party lending report that 2 other people had missed, and her manager told her, "Good catch," and she said thank you and moved on. She ate a bag of pretzels at her desk at 4 o'clock and thought about nothing except what was in front of her. She drove home at 5:30. The suitcase was on the top shelf of the bedroom closet, behind a stack of extra blankets. She'd put it there after their last trip 2 years ago, a conference in Atlanta that Reggie had come to for one day and then left early because of a deal call. She pulled it down, set it on the bed, opened it. She didn't rush. She didn't throw things in. She moved to the dresser and opened the top drawer and started folding. Underwear, 2 bras, her everyday jewelry in the small travel pouch. She moved to the closet and took 4 work blouses, 2 pairs of slacks, her comfortable weekend clothes. Her toiletry bag was already packed. She'd done that before she left that morning. She heard the front door open at 6:40. She didn't stop folding. Reggie's footsteps came down the hall. She felt the moment he reached the doorway, felt the pause in him before he even said a word. "What are you doing?" "Packing," she said. A long beat. Packing. "I'm staying at a hotel for a while." She heard him take a slow breath. "Denise." His voice had that careful tone, the one that meant he was recalculating. "I said that last night because you were pushing. You know I didn't mean. I know what you meant." She folded a gray cardigan and set it in the suitcase. "So this is… what? You're making a point?" She didn't answer that. "You're really going to walk out over a receipt?" His voice climbed just slightly. "I built this house. I built everything in it. You're going to drag a suitcase out of here like I'm some kind of… I'll be back for a few more things later in the week." She zipped the suitcase. She lifted it off the bed. "I'll let you know." She walked past him in the doorway, and he stepped back, just enough, without meaning to. She carried the bag down the hall, picked up her work bag and her laptop case from the front table, and walked out the front door. The hotel room was clean and quiet. King bed, a small desk by the window, white curtains that let in just enough light from the parking lot below. She put her suitcase in the corner and sat down at the desk and opened her laptop. She logged into the bank's joint portal. She pulled up the investment portfolio, the one she had co-signed on, the one that held what was left of her father's life insurance money after she'd handed half of it to Reggie 6 years ago. She opened the statements, started with the most recent, scrolled back through the months, and she began to read. She was up before 6 again, old habit. Her body didn't know how to sleep past 5:30 anymore, not on a workday, and her mind was already moving before she'd even opened her eyes. She made coffee from the little machine on the hotel dresser, the kind that took the small pods, and she sat down at the desk in her robe and pulled up the portfolio statements again. She had printed nothing yet. She wasn't ready to print. She was still reading. The original investment agreement was in her email. She'd scanned it herself 3 years ago, one of those quiet Sunday afternoons where she'd decided to get organized, to put everything important somewhere she could find it. She was glad now that she had. She opened the PDF and set it side by side with the portfolio screen. The agreement was 12 pages. She and Reggie had both signed it, both printed names, both notarized. The account was listed under both their names. The initial deposit, listed in plain black ink on page 4, included a wire transfer of $41,000, her father's life insurance payout, the half she had contributed. She remembered transferring it. She remembered sitting at this same laptop, a different apartment, and watching the number leave her savings account and land in the joint portfolio. She remembered how final it felt, how much she had trusted him. She looked at the current balance on the screen. Then she looked again. She did the math slowly, the way she did it at work. Not fast, not with assumptions. She took the starting balance from the agreement, added what she knew they had deposited over the years, and compared it against what was sitting in the account right now. The gap was significant. She opened the transaction history and started at the top, working backward the way she always did, most recent first, looking for the break in the pattern. The first one appeared 14 months ago, a transfer out, $11,000, routed to an account number she didn't recognize, listed in the description field only as Holloway Dev LLC. She didn't move for a moment. Then she kept scrolling. There was another one 2 months later, $15,000, same destination, same description. Holloway Dev, LLC. Then a gap of 6 weeks, and then another transfer, $9,000, then $22,000, 3 months after that, then 2 more in the same month 6 weeks ago, $14,000 and $18,000, one right behind the other, like whoever was doing it had stopped being careful. She added them up in the notepad she'd pulled from the hotel desk drawer. $89,000. She sat back in her chair. Her coffee had gone cold. She didn't pick it up. She typed Holloway Dev LLC into her browser and hit enter. The first result was a state business registry page. She clicked it. The filing was registered 14 months ago, the same month as the first transfer. The registered agent was listed at the top of the page, in a small font under the LLC's name. Registered agent, Yvonne Pruitt. Denise read the name twice. Then she looked at the address listed beside it, a suite number in an office park across town. She didn't recognize it. She sat very still. She searched the name next. Yvonne Pruitt, real estate, Holloway Dev. Several results came up, a LinkedIn profile, a mention in a local business journal from last spring, a photo from a development networking event. Denise clicked the LinkedIn profile first. The photo was professional. A woman in her early 30s, dark blazer, a wide smile that knew it was being photographed. Her title listed Junior Business Partner, Callaway Briggs Development, Denise's husband's company. She closed the laptop slowly. She opened it again. She looked at the transfer dates. She looked at the LLC filing date. She looked at the amounts, the frequency, the way they had picked up speed in the last 6 months. More often, larger, like someone running towards something and not watching behind them. This was not a mistake. There were no accidental transfers. Nobody moved $89,000 out of a joint investment account and into a business LLC across 14 months by accident. Not in 4 transfers, not in 6, not in 8. Her father had died on a Tuesday in October, 5 years ago. Heart failure, fast, no warning. She had flown home alone because Reggie had a deal closing that week. She had handled the arrangements, the paperwork, the calls. She had stood in her parents' kitchen and gone through his files herself because her mother couldn't. And 3 months later, when the life insurance cleared, she had wired half of it into this account. $41,000 of that money was somewhere in the Holloway Dev LLC right now. She exhaled once, long and slow. Then she picked up her phone and called Adrian. "I need you to do something for me," she said when Adrian picked up. "I need you to trace an LLC, properly. Ownership structure, filing history, everything connected to it." A pause. "Okay, what's the name?" "Holloway Dev LLC." She looked at the screen. "And Adrian, the registered agent is a woman named Yvonne Pruitt. She works for Reggie." Adrian knocked at 6:15. She had a folder tucked under one arm and a paper bag from the tie place 2 blocks over in her other hand. She looked at Denise's face when the door opened and didn't say anything about it. Just walked in, set both things on the table, and pulled out a chair. That was Adrian. She didn't make a production out of things. "Eat first," she said, opening the bag. "I'm not hungry." "I didn't ask." She set a container in front of Denise and opened her own. "You'll think clearer with food in you. Trust me." Denise sat down. She ate a few bites without tasting them. Adrian let the silence sit for a minute, the way she always had, even back in the dorm room when things were bad. Then Adrian wiped her hands on a napkin and pulled the folder to the center of the table. "Okay," she said. "Here's what I found." The folder had 7 pages inside, paper clipped together and tabbed in 3 places with small sticky notes. Adrian's handwriting was on each tab. Clean, precise, the same handwriting she'd used on case briefs for the last 9 years. She laid the first page flat between them. It was the LLC formation document, the full version, not the registry summary Denise had found that morning. "Yvonne Pruitt is not just the registered agent," Adrian said. She pointed to a signature block at the bottom of the page. She's a co-signer on the founding paperwork. She signed this the same day the LLC was formed. Denise looked at the signature. Yvonne A. Pruitt. The letters were round and confident, the kind of signature someone practiced. When was this filed? Adrian pointed to the date in the upper right corner. 14 months ago. The same month as the first transfer. So the LLC opened, and the first money moved in within weeks, Denise said. Same month, Adrian confirmed. Look at page 3. Page 3 was a copy of the LLC's operating agreement, the internal document that spelled out how the entity worked, who had authority to accept capital contributions, and under what terms. Adrian had circled a paragraph near the bottom of the second section. Denise read it. It said that the managing member, Yvonne Pruitt, identified by name, had authority to accept capital contributions into the LLC without requiring a formal disclosure of the contributing party's source of funds, provided the contribution was transferred directly into the LLC's primary operating account. Denise read it again. She wrote that in herself? Denise asked. Her name's on the signature line for the operating agreement, same as the formation doc. Whether she drafted it or just signed it, she agreed to it. Adrian leaned forward. Here's why that matters. In a professional context, and I pulled her LinkedIn, looked at her role at Callaway Briggs, she's listed as someone who has approval authority on new development deals. That's not a passive role. That means she's expected to conduct due diligence before she signs. Denise looked up from the page. So, when she accepted seed capital into this LLC without asking where it came from, she either didn't know and failed to do her job, Adrian said, or she knew and didn't want it on paper. She held Denise's eyes. Given that she signed the clause that specifically removed the documentation requirement, a good attorney is going to argue she built herself a cover. The room was quiet. Denise looked back at the signature, at the date, at the clause Adrian had circled. $41,000 of her father's money had gone into an account this woman approved, under a clause this woman signed, in an LLC this woman co-founded with Denise's husband. She had never met Yvonne Pruitt. She didn't know what her voice sounded like. She had only seen a professional photo and a job title on a screen. But she felt, sitting at that hotel table with Adrian's folder open in front of her, the full shape of what had been built without her knowing it. Not just an affair, not just a lie, a structure. A deliberate, documented structure that had been put in place to move her money somewhere she couldn't see it. And this woman had signed her name to it and kept right on going. She benefited directly, Denise said. It wasn't a question. Her position in the development deal is funded by what's sitting in that LLC, Adrian said. Whatever stake she's carrying, it's capitalized by those transfers. Without that money, she doesn't have a seat at that table. Denise nodded slowly. She closed the folder. She thought about the first transfer, 14 months ago. She thought about where she had been 14 months ago, sitting at her desk at the bank, catching other people's fraud, coming home to fold laundry and ask questions that got one-word answers. I need to know how long this was planned, she said. Before the LLC, before Yvonne. I need to know when he started thinking about this. Adrian looked at her. How are you going to find that out? Denise set the folder on top of her portfolio statements and straightened the edge. Reggie talks to his mother, she said. He always has. I'm going to go see Patrice tomorrow. Patrice Callaway lived in a cream-colored house on the east side of town with a porch swing she never sat on and a garden she kept perfect. There were marigolds along the front walk, the same ones she planted every spring, orange and yellow, lined up like she'd measured the space between them. Denise had helped her plant them once, 3 years ago, maybe 4. She couldn't remember exactly when she'd stopped being invited. She pulled in just after 1 o'clock with 2 coffees from the place on Harmon Street, the one Patrice liked, with the paper cups and the cardboard sleeves. A small thing, but Patrice noticed small things, and Denise knew that. She knocked twice. Patrice answered in a cardigan and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She looked at Denise's face and something shifted in her eyes. Concern, or something close to it, before she pulled the door wider and stepped back. "Come on in," she said. "Come on." They sat at the kitchen table, the same round table with the woven placemats and the fruit bowl in the center that had been there for as long as Denise could remember. The house smelled like dish soap and the faint sweetness of something baked earlier in the day. Patrice wrapped both hands around her cup. "How are you holding up?" she asked.
"I'm okay," Denise said, "taking it one day at a time."
Patrice nodded. She looked like she wanted to say more, but was measuring something, deciding how much to give.
"He called me," she said finally. "Reggie, a few weeks back."
Denise kept her face still.
"What did he say?"
Patrice looked down at her coffee. Her thumb moved along the edge of the sleeve, back and forth.
"He said the marriage had been struggling for a long time, that
She paused.
that you'd been checked out, emotionally, that he felt like he'd been alone in it for years."
The words landed clean and cold. Denise didn't move. She didn't blink any faster than normal. She just let them sit there on the table between them, next to the fruit bowl and the neat placemats, and she looked at Patrice's face and understood exactly what she was seeing. He had called his mother before the receipt. Before Denise asked a single question, he had already written the story and handed it to the person most likely to repeat it, planting the version of events where he was the one who had suffered, the one who had been lonely, the one who deserved sympathy. She had been caught off guard by his dare at dinner, but the story had been in place for weeks before that.
"Did you believe him?"
Denise asked. Her voice was calm. Patrice looked up. There was something uncomfortable moving behind her eyes.
"He's my son," she said. "I didn't have reason not to."
"I know," Denise said. "I understand that." She meant it. She didn't hold it against Patrice. She had watched Reggie work a room her entire marriage. She knew exactly how convincing he sounded when he needed to. She let the quiet settle for a moment. Then she set her cup down and folded her hands on the table.
"Patrice," she said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it as someone who deserves the truth, not just as his mother."
Patrice went very still. Denise told her, slowly, clearly, without drama. She explained the transfers. She explained what the LLC was and who was listed on the paperwork. She explained that the money used to seed that account, the money now sitting inside a business entity she had never been told about, had come from the life insurance payout she received when her father died. Patrice's expression changed. The careful neutrality she'd worn since the door cracked open pulled away like a layer coming loose. "That was your daddy's money," she said, almost to herself. Her voice was quiet. "Yes," Denise said. Patrice put her cup down. She looked at the table for a long moment, and Denise watched the silence work on her, watched her replay the phone call from Reggie, his careful voice, his practiced sadness, and set it next to what she had just heard. "He told me you were the one who pulled away," Patrice said, not accusatory, something more like disbelief working its way out. "He told you that before I found anything," Denise said, "before I asked a single question." Patrice pressed her lips together. She looked older, suddenly. Not in a frail way, in the way of a woman absorbing something she wished she didn't have to. "He lied to me too," she said. It was barely above a whisper, but it was the whole thing said plainly. Denise reached across the table and briefly covered Patrice's hand with her own. She didn't say anything. There was nothing to add. She was back in the car by 2:30. She sat in Patrice's driveway for a moment, the engine running, the marigolds bright and still in the afternoon light. Then she picked up her phone and found the number she had saved 2 nights ago, in the quiet of the hotel room, after she had gone through every document in her portfolio folder. Conrad Briggs. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Mr. Briggs," she said, "this is Denise Calloway. I need to meet with you privately. It's about the development deal." She paused. "There's something you need to see before that closing goes through." The coffee shop on Millfield Avenue opened at 6:30. Denise was there at 6:40, a corner table already claimed, her folder open, papers stacked in the order she intended to use them. She had not slept well, but she had not needed to. She had spent the night organizing, labeling, making sure everything was clear enough that a stranger could follow it in 5 minutes. That was the job. That had always been the job. Find the pattern, name it, show it to someone who can't pretend they didn't see it. Conrad Briggs walked in at 7:02. He wore a gray blazer and no tie, a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. He was a tall man, trim, somewhere in his late 50s, with close-cut silver hair and the kind of face that gave nothing away for free. He spotted her without looking around twice and walked straight over. "Mrs. Calloway," he said. A handshake, firm, brief. He sat down, set his portfolio on the table, and folded his hands on top of it. His eyes went to the papers in front of her before they went back to her face. "I appreciate you coming," she said. "You said it was about the closing." His voice was even. "I'm listening." She walked him through it the same way she would walk a supervisor through a flagged audit. No emotion in it, no speeches, just documents, dates, and dollar amounts. She started with the joint investment account statements, 3 months of transfers, each one moving funds into an account neither she nor Conrad had ever been listed on. She set a highlighted copy in front of him and watched his eyes move across the numbers. Then she placed the LLC formation documents beside them, the name, the registered agent, the founding date, then Yvonne's signature. "This entity was formed 7 months ago," Denise said. "The seed capital that established it came from a joint account I have equal legal ownership of. This amount here," she tapped the page, "came specifically from a life insurance payout from my father's estate. It was transferred without my knowledge or consent." Conrad picked up the LLC document. He read it the way she expected him to, slowly, carefully, a man running calculations behind very still eyes. "Yvonne Pruitt signed this," he said. It wasn't a question. She did, as co-signer on the formation paperwork, accepting that capital as the entity's seed funding. There's no source documentation attached, no verification trail. She accepted the funds without asking where they came from. Conrad set the paper down. He looked at it for a moment longer, then looked at her. "And this capital is embedded in the current deal," he said. "The one we're scheduled to close." "Yes," Denise said. "It's in the funding structure." The coffee shop was quiet around them, a few people at the counter, the low sound of something grinding in the back. Conrad sat with his hands still on the table, and Denise watched him reach the same conclusion she had reached 2 nights ago in that hotel room. He got there fast. She had expected that. "I wasn't told the source of those funds," he said. His voice was flat and precise, the way a man speaks when he is already protecting himself. "I came in on the basis of the deal's structure and the projected returns, not the origin of the seed capital." "I know," Denise said. "That's why I came to you first." He looked at her a moment. Something shifted, just slightly. Respect, maybe. Or the recognition of a person who understood exactly what she was doing. "I can't close on a deal with stolen capital in it," he said. "That's not something I'm willing to carry." He pulled the LLC document closer, looked at it once more, and then squared it back against the stack. "I'll be contacting my attorney this morning to delay the closing date, indefinitely, until the funding chain can be cleaned up or unwound." "That's all I needed to hear," Denise said. She began stacking the papers back in order, neatly, without rushing. Conrad watched her without speaking. "I'll need copies," he said. She slid a second set across the table. She had prepared 2. 40 minutes later, Conrad Briggs was back in his car. Across town, Reggie was on the phone with Yvonne, leaning against the kitchen counter in the house that still had Denise's coffee mug on the shelf. "She's in a hotel," he said. He sounded almost amused. "Licking her wounds. You know how it is when they get dramatic." Yvonne's voice came through light and unbothered. "So it's handled?" "It's handled." He opened the refrigerator, looked in without interest, closed it again. "She'll come back around, or she won't. But either way, the deal closes next week, and none of that changes." He believed that. Completely. Denise sat in her car in the parking lot outside the coffee shop and pulled up her attorney's number. Marcus Webb. She had called him 2 days ago to discuss her rights. Now she had something to give him. He answered on the second ring. "Marcus," she said, "I'm ready to move. I need you to schedule a formal meeting, me, Reggie, and Conrad Briggs together. I want to present everything at once." Marcus Webb's office was on the 4th floor of a building on Carver Street, overlooking a parking garage and a row of dry cleaners. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet, and it was private, and the conference table was long enough to hold everything Denise had brought. She arrived 15 minutes early. She arranged her documents at her end of the table, one stack for Marcus, one stack for Conrad, one stack face down in the center. Then she sat, poured herself a glass of water from the pitcher on the credenza, and waited. Conrad arrived at 9:50. He nodded at her. She nodded back. He took the chair to her left, set his leather portfolio down, and said nothing. Reggie arrived at 9:58. He walked in looking the way he always looked walking into rooms, chin up, shoulders back, a man who assumed the room would adjust to him. But then he saw Conrad, and the walk slowed, just slightly, a flicker of something crossing his face that he worked fast to cover. "What is this?" Reggie said, not to Marcus, to Denise. She didn't answer. Marcus Webb stood and extended his hand. "Mr. Calloway, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Reggie shook it and took the chair across from Denise, but his eyes hadn't left her face. He was searching it for something. Nervousness, maybe. Uncertainty. The old signals she used to give him when she was about to back down. He didn't find them. "I was told this was about the separation agreement," he said. "It is," Marcus said, "among other things. Let's get started." Marcus kept the opening brief. He introduced himself formally, noted that the meeting was being recorded with all parties' knowledge, and confirmed Conrad's presence in his capacity as a named party in the related business matter. Then he nodded to Denise. She slid the center stack across the table, one copy in front of Reggie, one in front of Conrad, one she kept for herself. "I want to walk you through something," she said. Her voice was calm, even. She used the voice she used at work when she was presenting findings to a board. "This is a 12-month statement summary from our joint investment account. Page 1. I've highlighted the transfers in yellow." Reggie looked down at the page. The transfers were there in clean yellow rows. Dates, amounts, the destination account number. 11 transactions. The largest one, dated 8 months ago, was the one she had circled in red. "That transfer," she said, tapping the circle, "corresponds to the life insurance payout from my father's estate, $41,000. It was moved from our joint account into an account I had no knowledge of." Reggie opened his mouth. "Page 2, she said before he could speak. "This is the LLC formation document for a company called Meridian Rise Partners. It was formed 7 months ago. The registered agent is Yvonne Pruitt. The seed capital used to establish it matches the total amount transferred from our joint account over the preceding 6 weeks." She paused. "Including my father's money." Reggie sat back in his chair, his jaw tightened. "Page 3, Denise said. "This is a record of a phone call you had with your mother 8 weeks ago, before I found the hotel receipt. She told me herself what you said during that call, that our marriage had been failing for years because I had grown distant. You built that story before I knew anything was wrong. You prepared your exit before you gave me any reason to look." The room was very quiet. Conrad had not turned a single page. He already knew what was there. He sat with his hands folded on the table, watching Reggie with the flat patience of a man who had already made his decision. Reggie shifted in his chair. "You're taking things out of context. Money moves between accounts all the time in a development cycle. That's just how the structure—" "Reggie." Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. "The documentation is clear. The transfers are dated, sourced, and traceable. The funds from your wife's inheritance were moved without her consent into an entity she was never disclosed as a stakeholder of. That's the record." "Conrad." Reggie turned to him, his voice shifting, less defensive now, almost appealing. "You know how deals work. This is normal cash movement. We're days from closing." "We're not," Conrad said. He said it plainly, the way someone states a weather forecast. I'm formally withdrawing my backing from the deal, effective today. He opened his portfolio and slid a single page across to Marcus. My attorney drafted this yesterday. It cites the compromised funding chain and my liability exposure as the basis. The deal cannot close on its current structure. The color drained from Reggie's face, not all at once, slowly, like something leaking out of him. You can't, he started. It's done, Conrad said. Reggie turned back to Denise. His composure was fracturing now, the careful surface giving way to something raw and angry underneath. You did this, he said, low, almost quiet. You went behind my back and… I followed the paper trail, she said. That's all. Marcus interlaced his fingers on the table. Mr. Calloway, I want to be direct with you. The documentation Mrs. Calloway has assembled is sufficient to support her divorce proceedings and to form the basis of a separate legal action regarding the misappropriated funds. I strongly recommend you speak with your own attorney before this conversation goes any further. Reggie stared at the stack of papers in front of him. He didn't flip to page 4. He didn't need to. He pushed back from the table and stood, the chair scraping hard against the floor. He didn't say anything else in the room. He picked up his keys, left the papers where they were, and walked out. The elevator hadn't even closed behind him before his phone was in his hand. He stepped out into the parking garage, the sound of his footsteps bouncing off the concrete walls, and called Yvonne. She picked up on the second ring. We have a problem, he said. His voice was tight, stripped of all the ease from this morning. Conrad pulled out. She had everything. The transfers, the LLC, all of it. He stopped walking, pressed his back against the side of his car. She showed Conrad. She showed my attorney. She's got Yvonne. She's got your name on the formation papers. A pause. You need to get ahead of this, he said, right now. Yvonne Pruitt's office was on the second floor of a renovated building on Leland Avenue, the kind of place that tried hard to look established. Exposed brick walls, a glass desk, a framed rendering of a mixed-use development project mounted behind her chair like a trophy. Denise had called that morning, before the meeting at Marcus's office. She kept her voice neutral, businesslike, said she wanted to discuss the Meridian Rise partnership directly. Yvonne had agreed, without hesitation, confident, unbothered. She hadn't spoken to Reggie yet. Denise arrived at 2 o'clock with a single folder tucked under her arm. The receptionist led her back. Yvonne was already standing when she walked in, hand extended, a practiced smile in place. She was younger than Denise expected, 31 maybe? Sharp cheekbones, a blazer that fit perfectly, the kind of woman who had spent years making sure every surface detail was right. Denise, she said warmly, as if they were old acquaintances. I'm glad we're doing this. I know things have been complicated. They have, Denise said. She shook her hand once, sat down, and placed the folder on the glass desk between them. Yvonne sat. Her eyes dropped to the folder, then came back up, still composed. I want to be up front, Yvonne said. Whatever is happening between you and Reggie personally, I've tried to keep my role strictly professional. I'm sure this has been painful for you, and I respect that. But the business is separate. That's actually what I'm here about, Denise said. The business. She opened the folder and slid the first page across. It was the LLC formation document for Meridian Rise Partners. She tapped the bottom of the page. That's your signature, Denise said. Yvonne looked at it. A small pause. Yes, I'm a co-signer on the entity. That's not a secret. This clause, Denise said, tapping a specific paragraph near the bottom of the page. It's the capital acceptance provision. You signed off on receiving the seed funding for this LLC without requiring documentation of its source. Do you see that? Yvonne's expression stayed even. That's standard language in early-stage structures. You take on risk when the deal is still forming. It doesn't mean… The money came from my joint investment account, Denise said. Specifically from a life insurance payout I received after my father died. $41,000. It was transferred without my consent and used as the seed capital for a company you co-signed into existence. The room went quiet.
Something shifted behind Yvonne's eyes, a small recalibration. She leaned back slightly in her chair. "I wasn't told where the money came from," she said. Her voice was still smooth, but the warmth was gone now. "Reggie handled the funding side. That was his role in the structure. I brought the deal relationships and the development contacts. I signed what my role required me to sign." "Your professional role," Denise said carefully, "required you to verify the source of capital before accepting it into an entity you co-founded. That's not just standard practice. In this state, for a deal of this size, it's an obligation." She slid a second page across. "This is the state filing that outlines that requirement for registered agents on LLCs above a certain funding threshold. Your name and your signature are on a document that accepted capital without that verification." Yvonne stared at the page. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she exhaled, slowly, and something in her posture changed. The blazer, the glass desk, the framed rendering behind her. None of it was helping her now. "I suspected," she said quietly. "I didn't know for certain, but I suspected the money hadn't been fully documented." She pressed her lips together. "The deal was good. The return projections were real. I told myself it wasn't my place to dig into how Reggie managed his side." "But it was your place," Denise said. Not harshly, just plainly. "And you didn't, because it benefited you not to." Yvonne's jaw tightened. "Reggie told me the funding was handled. He told me everything was clean. If he misrepresented that to me, then I'm a victim here too." "You may have been misled," Denise said. "That's between you and him." She closed the folder.
"But Conrad Briggs has already received this documentation. He has your signature, the clause, and the timeline." Yvonne went still. "I spoke with him this morning," Denise added. Yvonne's mouth opened slightly, then closed. She looked toward the window, then back. "Conrad he knows I wasn't the one who moved the money. I didn't steal anything, I was just—" Her phone buzzed on the desk. She looked down at it. The name on the screen was Conrad Briggs. She didn't pick it up, but she didn't look away from it either. It buzzed a second time, then stopped. A moment later, an email notification appeared below it, his name again, the subject line visible in the preview. Meridian Rise, your involvement. Yvonne sat very still, staring at the phone on her glass desk, the framed rendering on the wall behind her, the empty chair where Denise had been sitting. Denise was already gone. The office was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. The kind that feels like an ending. Yvonne didn't reach for the phone. Not yet. The conference room at Marcus Webb's office was quiet and still. A long oak table, leather chairs, a window that looked out over the street below where people moved through their day without knowing anything had shifted. Denise sat on one side with Marcus beside her. Reggie's attorney sat across. Reggie himself was not in the room. That said everything. The stack of documents in front of Marcus was thick, organized, color-tabbed in 4 places. 3 weeks of back and forth had led to this table, and it had not been a fair fight. Denise had made sure of that. "They've agreed to the full recovery of the transferred funds," Marcus said, flipping to the first tab. $41,000, including the interest accrued during the period of misappropriation. He moved to the second tab. "The joint investment portfolio reverts to Denise in full. The marital home goes to auction and the proceeds are split, with Denise receiving 60% given the documented contribution disparity." Third tab. "His attorney attempted to argue the LLC losses reduce his net obligation. We rejected that. The fraud documentation made that argument untenable." Reggie's attorney, a tired-looking man in a gray suit, said nothing. He had stopped pushing 2 days ago. The paper trail had a way of doing that. Marcus slid the final signature page across to Denise. She picked up the pen. She didn't rush. She read the line her name was printed beneath, and for a moment she just sat with it. 11 years. A marriage she had bent herself in half to preserve. A man she had helped build from a rented room and a half-formed idea. A father's life insurance check that was supposed to be a foundation for something real. All of it documented. All of it settled. She signed. The
The pen made a clean, quiet line across the page. Marcus gathered the papers without ceremony. Reggie's attorney stood, buttoned his jacket, and left without making eye contact. The door clicked shut behind him. "That's it," Marcus said. Denise exhaled slowly. "That's it," she said. 1 year moved the way hard years do, fast in memory, slow while it was happening. The settlement check cleared in early spring. By summer, Denise had found a small office suite on Carver Street, a quiet block with 2 coffee shops and a parking lot that never filled up. The sign on the door read, "Callaway Financial Consulting." Underneath, in smaller letters, "Asset Protection, Financial Literacy, Women in Transition." The idea had come to her in the hotel room, back at the beginning, sitting with her laptop open and those portfolio statements spread across the bed. She had known how to read them. Most women didn't. That knowledge had saved her. She decided it should save others. By fall, she had 7 clients. By the following spring, she had 22. Word traveled the way it does among women who need help and don't know who to trust. A referral from a divorce attorney.
A mention in a church bulletin. A woman who had heard about her from her sister, who had heard about her from a friend who had been in a situation. Denise didn't advertise. She didn't need to. She built the business the same way she had built her case, methodically, document by document, one clear fact at a time. She heard about Reggie the way she heard about most things she no longer needed to chase, through other people, through the natural drift of information in a city where development circles were small and memory was long. Conrad Briggs had made certain that Reggie's name didn't open doors anymore, not in his network, not in the networks adjacent to his. The fraud documentation had circulated among the people it needed to reach, quietly but permanently. No one wanted liability attached to their deal. No one wanted a partner who had done what Reggie had done. The last she heard, he was working property management for a mid-sized rental company on the east side, scheduling maintenance calls, handling tenant complaints. A man who had once talked about owning entire blocks, now answering calls about broken thermostats. She didn't feel satisfaction when she heard it. She didn't feel much at all. That surprised her, the first time she noticed it. Then she understood. She had stopped needing him to suffer. She had needed him to stop having power over her, and he didn't anymore. Yvonne Pruitt was mentioned once, in passing, by Adrian, working at a restaurant in Holbrook, the next town over. No one in any serious business circle said her name anymore. She had bet her career on a man who wasn't worth the risk, and the house had collected. On a Thursday evening in late April, Denise stayed in the office after her last client left. The space was hers in a way that still felt new. Her desk, her filing cabinet, her name on the door. She reached into the bottom drawer and took out a small glass bottle, dark amber, a white label she'd read so many times she didn't need to look at it. She had stopped wearing it because he never noticed. She put a little on her wrist, then her neck. The scent settled into the air around her, warm and clean and entirely familiar. She stood by the window for a moment. The street below was quiet. The evening light came in low and soft across her desk. It was hers. All of it was hers. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I've got 2 stories on the screen that you have to watch next. Have a great day.